Hogstye.
Hey everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Hogstye. This is Alex East coming to you from Queens, New York this week, as I'm up here visiting family. I have the full crew though. We got Jamal, we have Steve. Guys, I hope you're doing good. It's been a fairly quiet week in Washington Redskins slash football team slash Commanders slash Braves land. So Steve shuddered when I did that. He did a physical shudder.
Yeah.
But how you guys doing? How things been there, Jamal?
I've been good. It's been a very busy week for me, but productive all in all. I pushed out a draft profile on Drake London, USC wide receiver coming out in the draft,
Cool.
and outside of that, I was able to speak to Benjamin St. Juste too. So I mean, it was a pretty busy week. Yeah, it was a pretty busy week, but productive. I feel bad for my mom because my mom, first of all, she texts me every day, so that is what it is.
Moms.
But I didn't realize I haven't responded back to her in 2 days, so I took the time out to call her yesterday, and try to catch up with her. But yeah, it's been a pretty busy week.
I get it, man. Moms are
on
like
top of the
that.
fact that we're going back to the office, Alex. You know, we're both.
You're finally going back in?
Yeah, we're going back
club.
in about a month. We're going back, but it's a phasing, so we don't have to go like all every week. I mean, every day out the week.
You guys haven't been in the office?
Some of us never left.
I haven't been in the office.
Really? I've been in the office for more than a year.
Yeah, look, federal a little bit. I don't know. I mean, it's different. And on top of that, because of the agency that I'm in, while it's a part of the transportation, it's like its own entity. So like, you know, they got their own set of rules as well.
Well, the federal government's run by idiots.
It's a union thing, actually, why they're not in. I know a lot about it just because I've been sitting in on those meetings for us. So, yeah.
And doing the unions AV for those meetings?
Yep, exactly. It's not like I'm making decisions. No.
Tell us all about it, Alex.
No, it's very boring.
By the way, you're supposed to say, I'm in the Hogstye's New York City studios. We're not supposed to tell people that you're really, in a family member's
just
living
in my
room.
Grandmother's guest room right now.
Yeah.
Look, it's a learning lesson, Alex. Finesse it moving forward.
Our glamorous Flushing offices.
That's exactly right. That's what you're supposed to say.
Our glamorous Flushing office, yes. Yeah, I'm actually not that far from your friend Chris Larry right now if he's back in Brooklyn.
I just spent an hour talking with Chris Larry.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so let's see. We have a few things to cover. Let's start off, of course, Steve, with roster moves. That's the stuff we always want to get out of the way first.
Yeah.
It's been quiet on the free agent signing front, but I'm assuming the team's made some moves.
Well, yeah. So the free agent move they signed was to sign F.A. Obata, and I'm going to come back to him because he's got a super interesting story. Danny Johnson, the corner who's been with Washington since 2018, he's back. I don't have contractual details about Johnson yet.
Right.
And then Cornelius Lucas, the offensive tackle, they re-signed. I've got the deal was 2 years, $8.2 million, but beyond that, I don't have any more details about his contract. We know who kind of we're getting in that, and we'll certainly discuss it, but F.A. Obata. So first of all, the contract is 1 year, $1.8775 million. 352 million guaranteed. This includes a $152,000 roster bonus. But I just want to briefly go over his background for those of you who don't know. Born in Nigeria, moved to the Netherlands when he was 10. He and his sister became the victim of human trafficking. Ended up in London by themselves, homeless, and eventually ended up in foster care, 10 different foster care homes, basically almost street kids.
Yeah, drifting house to
Yeah,
house.
right. And then he discovered football at the age of 22 years old. He's about to be 30 in April. Discovers football in London, plays for a local London team, and then ends up in
Carolina, right?
No, Dallas first.
Oh, okay.
And they looked at his body type and said tight end, but see, he didn't know anything about the game. It was just too much for him, having to figure that out. So they moved him to defense, and then and that was in 2015, and then he bounced around for a while. Cowboys had him, Kansas City Chiefs, Atlanta Falcons, offseason roster. Then he landed in Carolina, with our buddy Ron Rivera,
and his staff.
International Pathway Program. This is the same program that David Botta's in. In essence, the short version of the long story is that
Samus Reyes is in that program too, I believe.
It's and it will guarantee a spot because on the roster in order to develop international talent without having to punish the team by forcing them to carry somebody who's not really ready to play. That's what David Botta is. And so now Efe Obada has actually done some things, though. He's played in some games. He has 2 starts. He's got 11 sacks in his career. 6'5", 265. He's got speed. He's gotten rave reviews from teammates. He got a game ball. He had 3 sacks in one game in Carolina. Spent last year with Buffalo, 3.5 sacks, 12 tackles. This is a guy that Ron Rivera likes and admires as a person.
Sure.
If you watch his interviews and whatnot, he comes across as a guy who's fairly driven. Probably no doubt as a result of his background. So it's a very interesting story. I think he's a guy that the fan base will probably get behind once they learn a little bit more about him.
It's definitely an interesting story. I didn't even I would love to know, not like in a I guess just a naturally curious way. We're all curious, but I would just like to know, at what point did he realize that he was a part of the human trafficking ring? Because that's just kind of an interesting. You don't really come across people. I'm sorry, I don't really come across people who experience anything close to becoming trafficked or anything like that. And knowing that there's somebody on the team that we cover, I would just love to know a little bit more about his background. That's kind of weird. You say he just found himself in London, him and his sister by themselves. It's that's just kind of crazy.
Yeah, that is really a wild kind of story that he has. But it also points to something Ron Rivera's done a lot of, both here and in Carolina. He's a big fan of that International Pathways program. That's obvious, because this is the 3rd guy we've had from that program in his couple of years here. And obviously we're talking about a guy who came with them from Carolina, but still, that's a thing Ron Rivera seems to really be passionate about. And it's the high character thing. This team has enough PR problems. Finding as many high character guys to surround the team with, just smart move by Rivera.
Yeah.
So it's one of the things I can't, complain about what he does.
Absolutely. Now there's a BBC article on him that gives a little bit of the details here. And this is the article that is the linked reference on his Wikipedia page if you guys want to find it. So what it says is, born in Nigeria, moved with his mother to the Netherlands when he was 8 years old. And then it says, quote, the details of how they came to arrive in England's capital are unclear. The word traffic has been used. Obada has not exactly described it in those terms. Says he and his sister were brought over by a stranger who was supposed to look after us. They did not. So it sounds like it was probably someone who knew him, a friend or something. Yeah. And one way or the other.
They get exploited.
Yeah, got exploited somehow. Says, he spent 2 nights, sleeping rough before a security guard gave him a shelter in a tower block he was working in. His children were eventually looked after temporarily by a friend of their mother, and then he spent the remainder of his childhood with 10 different foster homes. And so there's no indication about what happened to his mother in here, so I don't know where she is or whatnot, nor does it say anything about where his sister is, whether she's here with him or I don't know. Certainly, I think this is a guy who I'd certainly love to get on this show and talk to him a little bit about whatever he wants to go into about it, for sure.
Yeah, that's a fascinating story for sure.
But from a football perspective, he's fascinating too, because he's got a lot of natural talent. Yes, he's older, but he has from a football perspective, has no mileage on his body. Basically, hasn't been beat up, so he's a young 29, almost 30 by football standards, and he's a guy who's proven to be a pass rusher in his limited opportunity here. Now one thing that Washington has a lot of is edge rushers. They don't have a lot of interior guys. We talked about that last week. Tim Settle left, Matt Ioannidis left. But so now they brought another edge rusher in to compete with guys like Shaka Toney and James Smith-Williams and the other guy with 3 names who I always get mixed up. But nonetheless, I think Obata has a chance to fill a role, but he's going to have to compete with those guys. Bunmi Rotimi is another one.
Yeah.
So he's coming into an organization with a lot of edge rushers.
Well, the truth is they've needed a veteran like this in that room, because I think if there's one criticism you can make about how Montez Sweat and Chase Young were last year, there was a feeling that they were being a little bit immature at times.
The leadership aspect is lacking from them.
Yeah, but they're in their early 20s. I'm not going to freak out about guys that young in leadership yet. That's something you develop for the most part.
Look, to y'all's point. No, I'm about to say, to y'all's point, Ron has hinted at that without saying it directly, but he's hinted at that for X amount of months last year. But the truth of the matter is, the hard truth of the matter is, if you were looking at Chase Young to be that vocal leader for the team, or whatever leader that Ron is looking for, at the end of the day, you either got it or you don't. You can display it in many different ways. You don't have to be vocal. Some people do it through their play or through their practice habits, like Ryan Kerrigan did. He wasn't a vocal leader, but either you got it or you don't. And if you got that immaturity question coming in, sure, you can become mature, but are you one that people look at and see your work ethic and say, you know what, I respect this guy and I respect how he moves as a professional? Or do they look at you as in your voice and say, you know what, I love listening to what he got to say. He has a lot of game that he's putting down, and I love it. I'm coming to him for advice. I don't know. What time will tell, but sometimes when it comes to leadership, you got it or you don't.
Well, look at like a guy like Terry McLaurin. Doesn't talk a lot. Fairly quiet guy. Is not braggadocious. He's not out there, but the entire team respects him for his obvious elite talent. Contrast that with somebody like Antonio Brown and put the insanity aside. The crazy pill's part of his side. He's very vocal. Right. Clearly an immature person. And again, I'm setting aside the nuts part of him. I would say he's clearly less of a leader than a guy like McLaurin is, but McLaurin is not George Patton here.
Right.
McLaurin is a guy who quietly leads by example.
Right. And look, you need a little bit of everything. To build a great locker room, you need people who can rally the troops. You need people who can be the quiet, consummate professionals. And honestly, one aspect of leadership that people overlook all the time in sports, you need somebody who knows how to have fun. I think great teams always have the fun-loving leader in that clubhouse too. And every World Series team, every championship team I've ever watched, there's always one guy. He might be a backup, but there's one guy who you tell is the fun guy.
Who is that for Washington?
I don't know who that is for Washington right now. Like Clinton Portis and Chris Cooley did that for Washington when they were here, but I can't think of a guy they've had who's kind of been that for a while.
The fun guys in the Washington building are usually the ones that have been inappropriately touching cheerleaders.
Well, unfortunately, that might be true. Right now, I guess it's the special team. It was the special teams unit when, Tressway and Dustin Hopkins were goofing around all the time, but that Hopkins is gone. So I don't know. It's a good question. But those are, I think, 3 aspects to good leadership teams that, you need. Anyway, if there's nothing else roster moves wise, Steve.
Yeah. Okay. So remaining cap space, it's understanding I don't have Danny Johnson's contract and Cornelius Lucas' contract. They're at about little under 13.5 million by my spreadsheet count. That's including Landon Collins because he's still on the roster technically, and that is not including the rookie role, the rookie cap space. So if you include the rookie cap space in that, they're down to about a little over 7, the rookie pool.
They still haven't officially done anything with Landon Collins?
Well, no, Landon Collins. Okay, so Landon Collins.
It's the post-June 1st thing, is that it?
Landon Collins is designated as a post-June 1st release. And so his contract's going to be on the roster till June 1st.
Got it.
So add 12. So really, it's going to increase your cap space by 12 million once he's
on June 2nd, basically.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So that's where we're at. So they have a little wiggle room, which is good. All right. Why don't we move on from the roster though to talk about the post of the week regarding the rookie draft class. I did it this week. It was cornerbacks. As Steve pointed out to me, I wrote cornerbacks and safeties all as one initially, so now I'm already ahead.
Hey, stop! We don't want this.
And that's fine. All right, I just lost my page with all the cornerbacks that I had written about. There it is. All right, found it. So looking at the cornerback class, in my article, especially, I focused on top 2 rounds because I think if the team is really going to go after anybody, it's going to be early. Because even though they've invested heavily in the cornerback class, they still need help there. I think that's clear. They could use more depth. They could use more top-end talent. So that's what I looked at. One thing to note about this cornerback class, this is a fast class. 10 guys ran under a 4.4 in the 40 at the NFL Combine, and not all the top guys even participated in that. So there's a lot of speed in this class, and a lot of guys who are going to be deep on the draft are still really quick guys. So that's something to watch for. Speed really does matter when it comes to corners and receivers more than anything else, of course. So that's why I kind of want to make a note about that. But looking at this class, there's 2 guys who are, of course, I think anyone who's followed the draft at all know that Stingley and Sauce Gardner are going to be your top 2 corners. Which you want to put above the other really, I think, depends on the team. Looking at him, Sauce Gardner, very good player. He's big. He's 6'3". If you like that kind of tall corner outside on the edge, he's a great guy for that. He's a little raw. He's a little gangly at times, the way he plays because of that size. So, I think there's some polishing that needs to be done to his game. But overall, great talented corner. Sticks with his guys really well. He does everything that you want to see in a corner. Stingley, major injury issues, but he's like Diggs for the Cowboys. He makes a ton of plays when he's out on the field. But keep in mind, he's a junior now. He missed most of his sophomore and most of his junior seasons with injuries. Right now he's recovering from a Liz frac, which he should be recovered from shortly. If he's healthy, he is a top 5 guy in this draft. Easily.
Part of me wonders about Gardner if his popularity in part stems from the fact that he's a very flashy guy and he's got a very unique nickname. Those kind of things tend to stick in the fans and the fan base's collective conscience a little more than just a guy who's like John Smith and who's there and just does his job. Because like at the combine, he was wearing a gigantic, super gaudy, super ugly.
Yeah, he's doing a lot of the flash things.
Sauce thing. Yeah, he's sort of like a modern day Deion Sanders in that regard.
A little bit of that vibe,
which is something that nobody needs. The world does not need more of that. So part of me makes me wonder that. I mean, Stingley, the injuries.
Huge flag.
Obviously. Yeah, the thing is, excuse me, he's a legit serious corner. And so, I mean, do you gamble on that? Do you not gamble on that? I don't think, if we're talking Washington, they're not going to have to make that decision. He's going to be gone.
Probably. I think both these guys are gone in the top 10. I'd be shocked if either falls. If they do, even though I'd rather they go offense in the first round, you got to consider these guys. They're that good.
What does that mean for the cornerbacks on the roster? What are you maneuvering around? Who are you promoting? Who are you demoting? Like how is that going to work when you getting? So I feel like for me, I think that, and this is the tricky part, to be honest with you, there's money tied up in cornerbacks and receiver for Washington's roster in terms of like the payments. Now, Curtis Samuel's only had one more year, which is 2022, before you can kind of maneuver around his contract. But then you're focusing on Terry, and then defensively you got William Jackson and Kendall Fuller on some good contracts. So like in my head, I know wide receiver is the play that I would be making in the first round. However, cornerback shouldn't be out of the consideration, as you just broke down, Alex. I don't know how they'll play it. I just don't know how they'll play it moving forward on the defensive side, because are you going to phase Kendall Fuller out? Because you're not going to phase your big payday guy and William Jackson out. You're not going to phase him out.
Not yet.
And Benjamin St. Juste is coming off an injury, but they have plans to keep him in the ring to compete as the number 2 cornerback. So I don't know. It's tricky. That's where I'm getting at. It's just tricky in terms of the dynamic.
Yeah, I think to me, the nature of the contractual status of the cornerback group doesn't really lend itself to a high draft pick, because Jamal's right. William Jackson is starting. William Jackson could have one leg and he's going to start. They're paying him $14 million. So he's going to be out there. Same with Kendall Fuller. He's an $11 million guy. I mean, they've got $25 million tied up. Those two guys.
I think this is the last year of his, like, next year you could cut Fuller though, right? Like he's kind of in that final season of his contract.
Yeah, so next year's dead
similar
cap
to
goes
Curtis.
Yeah, next year's dead cap goes down to $3.125 million. So they could cut Fuller next year if they want. But I mean, this year, listen, the guy's playing. Okay.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. You don't put that kind of money on the bench. And then St. Juste, second round pick, they're going to give him every opportunity to get on the field. So I don't know if it's really practical for the team to place that kind of need in round 1. Wide receiver, yes.
I'm not saying it's the top need. I agree it's not. I'm saying these two guys look like they could be perennial Pro Bowlers, which is more than you can say about Fuller. Frankly, it's more than I think you'll say about William Jackson at this point. Is that worth that gamble?
No.
I
mean, I just don't think it's enough of a need. I mean, the obvious, I mean, if you rank needs on this team, I said it before, I wrote a column about it this week.
Yeah.
I mean, it's middle linebacker is the obvious number 1 need on the entire team. And I know that they drafted Jamin Davis, but he's
not a middle linebacker.
He's been a bust at middle linebacker. He may be a success in his career at outside linebacker, but thus far he's not a middle linebacker. They really need to do something. They've given no indication that this team is willing to do anything at all in free agency. They haven't lifted a finger to bring in any middle linebacker free agency. So I don't know how you don't go middle linebacker. If I'm Washington at number 11, I don't know how you not go middle linebacker.
Well, look, I would say defense, that is the number 1 need. Offense, it's still the wide receiver. Either of those I'm fine with too. I'm pretty open to both.
But they can field a competent NFL caliber roster at wide receiver. They do not have a starting middle linebacker on the roster.
Sure. I understand that. I'm just saying these are all needs.
And that's the point. That's a really good point, Alex, to the point that when you look at Washington and the holes they have, and then the holes they created, because you only have 5 picks now because of the trade that you did with Carson Wentz. You're limited in the direction that you can go. Like, sure, you can. I think for put it this way, if you have like 5 holes, I'm just laying out a number. You're only able to really truly fix like 2 of them this offseason because of the fact that you created or you traded for Carson Wentz. Obviously, as you're listening to this, as people are listening to this, you can actually do the math your own. Like, what are the positions in need? You can argue the right guard, because Wes Schweitzer was a backup. You don't know how he'll be able to perform for 17 weeks. You can look at the interior defensive line. You can look at the depth pieces there now, because you lost 2 people in Ioannidis and Settle, so you don't have the depth that you thought you had or that you had prior to trading for Wentz. And then obviously the linebackers, as you all just spoke about, and then the questions at free safety. Like it all exists. The holes exist. And it's not realistic to expect us to really fill all the holes in one off season. Like that's not realistically possible or should be a realistic expectation. But which route do you go, and what do you define as your most pressing need? For one, I'm not interested in them trying to get a linebacker in the first round. Like second round, we can talk about it, but first round, like I personally can't accept the fact that you are doubling back on a position that you whiffed on last year because you wanted that man to play middle linebacker for you. And it's okay for him to play outside. He can play weak if he wants to, but what your projection was for him didn't work out. So why should you double back in that same position when you can just bulk up and try to make the best out of the Carson Wentz situation and give him that firepower on that side?
I mean, my last argument would be it depends on who's there. I think there's two linebackers who are projected to be first round picks this year. If they're both, and they both could be gone too by the time Washington's picking. If they're not there, it's not worth it to go middle linebacker. Let's just be honest. You can't overdraft a guy again like they did with Davis. That would be a huge mistake. I want them to look at who's out there. Just get the guy with the highest ceiling. That's what they need to do. I don't necessarily care what position, unless it's like we drafted another quarterback. No, that'd be stupid. Just go for the guy you think has the best ceiling at this point. Let me get through the other guys I had mentioned in the article real quick. Most of these guys are late first rounders, early seconds. I kind of was thinking when I wrote this, Washington might trade back at some point, which I know is not a Rivera thing, but at 11, it might make sense for them to trade back and try and recoup some of the picks they lost from Wentz. So if they did that, a lot of these guys I think would be great selections if they want to go corner still. So I have two guys from Washington, Trent McDuffie and Kyler Gordon. Both good players, slightly different things in their game. McDuffie's got really good game speed, and Gordon is more a balanced player overall. Roger Mercury out of Auburn, when I watched him, some of the best hand placement I've seen, breaking up passes in this draft class. He's really good at that. Duron Kendrick out of Clemson in Georgia. He last played in Georgia, but played most of his career in Clemson. Fun thing to watch with him, he was a wide receiver when he first came out. His freshman year, he played receiver, kick returner, punt returner, and a little bit of defense and special teams. Even threw a pass, and then he switched to cornerback. So he's very raw, but very just naturally gifted athlete. He might be one of those guys who has a very low ceiling, high floor because of that. Anytime you have at least for me, anytime you see a receiver switch to the secondary, I wonder about that guy's ability to just be a turnover machine, getting picks and stuff. Last guy I mentioned in the article is a guy who I've kind of developed a little bit of a draft crush on, and that's Daxton Hill. He's out of Michigan. He plays both strong safety and nickel corner. And when I say he's like the in-the-box safety, he's the opposite of Landon Collins in that he actually can play coverage in the box. Whereas Collins was terrible at that, and he was basically a linebacker. Hill is really a cornerback and a perfect slot nickel type cornerback. So that's why I put him in the cornerback column and left him here, because I think if this team somehow were to trade back and they're like in the mid-20s in the first round and this guy's still there, he would be a perfect addition to this group. As you could have him playing safety at times. You could have him being your fourth corner in the slot, because let's be honest, they need a second slot corner more than they need anything else. Benjamin St. Juste is good on the outside. Fuller can play one slot position. This guy can play the other. And then you got Jackson on the other side. So that would be a guy who I target if they were to trade back. And, he's just good range. He's good against the run because he does play some strong safety. So that was the rest of the late first, early second round guys.
I think they'd have to trade back to get Hill pretty much.
Yeah. You don't want to take him at 11.
Yeah,
he's not an 11th overall guy.
But it's interesting that that he's maybe sort of a new version of Landon Collins a little bit, but
an anti-Landon Collins at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, of course, remember, Collins did very well in the role that once they put him in the role he should have been playing all along.
Right.
Once again, it's yet another fault of the coaching staff for failing to do that. I mean, if you want to be honest, they played Jamin Davis out of position. They played Landon Collins out of position. These are supposed to be defensive coaches. I think it's a criticism of their work in Washington.
Yeah.
For sure. But yeah, no, Hill, I think it would be an interesting name to bring into DC if they could work that out, in whatever appropriate trade it is.
You'd have to trade back before picking him.
But, right. But I don't know, he's sort of the only one in my head that kind of stuck out of this group, to be perfectly honest.
Well, and he also covers that need for safety depth. That's the other thing. He's just a good defensive, like a traditional defensive back.
I mean, the coaching staff does love versatility, especially in the secondary. So he strikes me as a bit of a Washington type of guy.
Yeah. I doubt they get one in the first round. If they go corner, I think it's a second round move, if anything. They're not going to go in the third. Obviously, they don't have a third round pick. And anything you do after that, it doesn't really matter in terms of.
No, that's a crapshoot.
Then it's a crapshoot, and you're talking depth guys.
So let me ask you all right quick before Dakota. I've been battling over here with Dakota for the past 5 minutes.
I've kind of seen her tail wagging.
Yes. How are you all ranking your positions of need in the first round? I mean, so let's put it this way: if in your head the person that you want is available at 11, whether it's cornerback, linebacker, or receiver, what position are you choosing as your 1, 2, and 3?
I mean, it's got to be middle linebacker, number 1, for sure, and then number 2 wide receiver, number 3 guard. Okay. I mean, they let's not pretend that Wes Schweitzer is a replacement for Brandon Scherf, because he's not, and let's also not pretend that they didn't lose 2 starting guards. They sort of traded Eric Flowers for Andrew Norwell, which I understand, maybe a better performer, better contract. I get it. But they just lost a 4-time, however many time Pro Bowler in favor of Wes Schweitzer. Yeah. So that's a big need. And yes, I mean, drafting guard in round 1, that's a tough call. I'm not suggesting they do it. But since Jamal asked, what are my draft priorities? Middle linebacker, wide receiver, guard.
I mean, I don't disagree with those as being priorities, and I would throw safety, maybe corner, whatever. And they need another talent at defensive back somewhere. And I'm just going to merge safety and corner into that same conversation for this. I still think I'm going receiver number 1, just because we've gone so long through this. Hey, we have, Terry McLaurin, and then everything else around him are 5th string receivers. I'm sick of it. We've done this for 2 years now. No one stepped up. You need at least one competent receiver opposite Terry or in the slot or something, because you don't have that. I don't. Has anyone even gotten above 500 yards in the season? I don't think. If they have, it's very close to 500.
They're putting up. Well, Curtis Samuel might have before he came to Washington.
Yeah, I'm not counting what he did before he came to Washington.
Oh, no, yeah, none of these guys have come close to that, no.
Yeah, they're all putting up 5th stringer numbers.
Yes.
So I'm sick of it. Like, we need a wide receiver opposite Terry.
I mean, the other guy that they've spent some money on is Cam Sims. So Cam Sims,
they don't know how to use him.
Yeah. So it's yet another thing that I would blame Ron Rivera for directly. Cam Sims is kind of the only guy on this team that's a bigger wide receiver. The rest of these guys are fairly small by receiver standards. Sims is 6'5". Yeah. And now they've spent, they guaranteed him $2 million. He's got a $2.5 million cap hit. I mean, hopefully the team is smart enough to start using him appropriately, because they've wasted this guy, wasted him over the past 2 years.
Yeah, it's honestly kind of pathetic. Just how bad they are at utilizing receiving talent. The number 2 receiver, I'm trying to figure out, because it's really J.D. McKissick, who had 400 yards. DeAndre Carter. Oh, no, Adam Humphries had 383. That was your second best receiver last year.
And Adam Humphries is nothing but a jag who's also not here.
Right. Those are pathetic numbers. And then the year before, Cam Sims had 477, which on most teams that's your fourth string receiver who puts up that kind of number. Just under 500, that's a fourth string receiver.
It's not good.
Yeah. So I'm sick of that. And my one thing about linebacker is, again, unless you can get one of the top guys, it's not going to be worth it in the first round. And there's
that wasn't Jamal's question though. Jamal's question was just,
big priority. I know.
Yeah. And by the way, the year before that, 2019, since we're going through this exercise, Kelvin Harmon, 365 yards.
Yeah. It's been a desert.
I think Washington's ability to draft receivers, period, has been a desert.
Yeah.
For decades.
Remember when Crowder got drafted and worked out, I was making that point that they went 30 years between drafting two good receivers.
Yeah. I mean, Art Monk, they drafted, Hall of Famer.
And then Crowder after that.
Yeah. Michael Westbrook had the natural talent, but was a train wreck mentally.
Rod Gardner was up there for half a season.
Yeah. So really and truly, since the days of Art Monk, it's been Jamison Crowder, who's no longer with us, and then Terry McLaurin. That's just an absolutely awful record.
Right. And that's not even just the first round. That's all of them.
That's we're not talking about first round picks here, people, because Terry McLaurin is a third round pick. This is wide receivers, period.
Right. We are terrible at it. So.
Well, there's no we, but yeah.
Well, you know what I meant.
Let me put in my preferences before.
Go ahead.
I swear, you guys know what I'm going through over here, and I'm about to have to slap fire out Dakota.
Yeah, we can see Dakota. Dakota doesn't normally make it on camera, but
I'm
going receiver number one, linebacker number 2, and then receiver number 3, because I need receivers.
Dakota's desperately trying to, get her input in by jumping on Jamal as he's talking.
Jamal's ready for that draft class we had where we went Ryan Kelly. Was it Devin Thomas? It was Devin Thomas, right? And
the receiver, Devin Thomas.
Fred Davis, Devin Thomas, and Malcolm Kelly. Yep, second round, 2008. I remember. I was excited in the moment.
Yeah, we all
were. Bust.
Yep. One guy didn't even wake up long enough to be a bust.
Sleepy Davis.
Sleepy Davis. All right. So since we're talking about it, I'm going to switch up my plan here. I don't know if I even told you guys what the order was. This trade Terry talk that's been going on social media and on the radio.
So I haven't seen any of it because I don't really follow it. So somebody tell me what is going on. I know there is something because it was mentioned in our comment section.
Just after that trade of Hill from the Chiefs and the amount of draft picks they got for him, a lot of fans I think are like, well, what could we get for Terry? Maybe it's worth it to trade Terry and get a bunch of draft picks. No, one, he's not going to get you what the Chiefs just got for Hill. He's not a top 3 receiver. He's a good receiver, but he is not elite. So I don't think he even gets you a first round pick. But why are you guys even concerned? You don't have another option if you lose Terry McLaurin. There's no one else on this roster.
So this is just a stupid Twitter thing. This isn't a real thing.
It was a radio too.
Yeah, I think the thing about this, it's crazy because I didn't even think it was gonna make it to the podcast, but it's funny, because my thoughts about it when I've seen it, I never spoke on it in the moment, but just observing, I was like, I didn't understand the emotional reaction behind the question, because at the end of the day, a question is just a question. It's not the fact that you're actually it's two things. It's not the fact that you're actually entertaining it. You're asking a question, but the second thing is you don't know what the team is doing. It's not like you asking the question is going to insult people, but to the actual root of it all is understanding where the team is and where Terry is. Terry is entering his 4th year. He has one more year left before he either goes to free agency or before he is franchise tag. Obviously, the team is going to work to try and extend him. But at the end of the day, one of the tough questions you have to ask from a business perspective is, do we think this is going anywhere in a good way with Terry? Because we don't want to be put in a situation where we have to trade. I mean, where we have to let him walk because we waited too late to try and extend him or try to trade him. And then you're looking at a Brandon Sheriff situation or whoever else walked, and you got comp picks for Kirk Cousins. You got comp picks for Kirk Cousins because you didn't want to trade him to the San Francisco 49ers because Kyle Shanahan worked there. So I think that's the whole root cause of the question. Is nothing wrong with that. And sure, he's been your most productive receiver, but at the end of the day, what are you going to do if he's not willing to sign here or willing to re-sign here? And you're forced to play the tag game with him, just like you did it with Brandon Scherf, just like you did it with Kirk Cousins, all those things. You have to ask that question, and it's a tough one for fans to really, like, I'm not talking about you, Alex. It's just like we're both on Twitter, so that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Yeah, we see
it's just hard for fans to kind of process that tough question because it's who we're talking about. We talked about this for the defensive line all of last year, talking about trading Montez Sweater or Daron Payne because, or even Matt Ioannidis because these guys are taking up space and eventually you're going to have to re-sign somebody. You want to trade them for a quarterback. Okay, that's cool because you have to eventually re-sign somebody. It's all conversation that's always been fair within it, but because it's Terry and Terry's name popped up, the emotional reaction had sparked, and I understand what Terry means to the team, but at the end of the day, it's the same thing with the defensive line. It's the same exact thing. You're entertaining trading somebody because you know that and on that side of the ball, somebody has to go. Well, when it comes to Terry, you're now approaching a contract war, a negotiation war that you don't know where you stand right now. You just don't know. So you have to ask the question.
For my part, I mean, if I were a fan of the team, obviously I would want Terry McLaurin to be a career player for the team. I do think that Washington would be foolish to go down this franchise tag road again because it's failed time and time again. It never works out very well when any team franchise tags a player, but especially in Washington, the two guys that Jamal mentioned, Cousins and Scherf. The difficulty I think is, and the fans don't know, but maybe the team does. Does Terry McLaurin want to be in Washington, or does he want to escape to a real franchise that's not a train wreck? And if the answer is the latter, then yeah, they probably should trade him. But I don't know if they conclusively know the answer to that question yet. Certainly the fans don't.
No.
And I think Terry I've not read anything that suggests that Terry himself has disclosed, whether directly or through his agent, any sort of preference like that. So if he's just kind of playing it out, seeing how it goes. See, we're entering year 3, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's got a whole nother year to go. The reason why year 3 is important is, they can do a new contract extension after year 3.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the reason why it's important. But I think the key for Washington, if I were in the front office, would be to deduce Terry McLaurin's intentions as soon as possible. And yeah, I would offer him a max contract. If I were Washington, I would, no matter what, offer him a max value contract extension as soon as eligible and see if he takes it. But I think Jamal has a point. If they're convinced he's going to leave, I just think the franchise road is pointless, and just trade him. But only if you think he's going to leave.
Yeah, all right. If you think that's the case, but I've seen nothing to indicate that. So I just think it's a lot of people bored and want to play the whole draft game. Anyway, I just want to get that out there. It's a weird thing to be rooting for getting rid of a guy like that.
Oh, random thought, by the way. This is all totally not related to anything, but rest in peace to Taylor Hawkins, the drummer of the Foo Fighters, who died Friday. Taylor Hawkins died Friday. The band was in Bogota, Colombia, for a South American concert tour. There's no word about
as to what.
Yeah, I mean, he OD'd on heroin 20 years ago, so you could speculate if you want, but there's no indication, no word from the band or from authorities is what happened. But rest in peace. He was, certainly a great drummer and one of the two faces of the Foo Fighters.
Man, Dave Grohl has some bad luck in terms of bandmates.
Yeah, Kurt Cobain killed himself. Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
A lot of those grunge guys all killed they all killed themselves or they all died of drug overdoses. Yeah.
I say that is rough. I don't know him, but R.I.P. But and then hearing to what you just said, Steve, the fact that happened to so many people and similar deaths.
Don't mess with heroin, man. As if people need to be told that.
Some people do, obviously.
Yeah, apparently. All right, so last topic. Steve and I disagree. I think we covered the Anheuser-Busch thing, that Anheuser-Busch has left the team.
I don't think we did.
I think we did, because I remember I was setting stats about InBev being the biggest drink producer in the country, or in the world.
Put it in on the show notes, though.
Yeah, well, I don't put everything in the show notes. Anyway, so we're going to combine the Anheuser-Busch story with the story that definitely happened this week, which was that it was announced first by the Team 980 that they are no longer going to carry their broadcast for the Washington Commanders. And then the team came out and said, no, we didn't choose you. It's not that you chose not to be with us. This is it's shaping like a bad breakup, like a high school breakup. I dumped you, no, I dumped you thing, which is very funny to me because I love seeing the bad things happen to Dan Snyder. So the team, apparently their contract was up, and when I say the team, I mean the radio station, Team 980. Their contract with the Washington Commanders was up. The Commanders were asking for a lot more money, it sounds like. We don't know how much. I did see one number that was interesting to me, but we'll get back to that. They put out requests for bids, and I guess the Team 980 did not come up with a very big number. So Washington is going to leave the station that Dan Snyder once owned. Remember, the reason they were on this podunk AM station was because Dan Snyder purchased his own radio station. And now they're going to be, we don't know where. That's the wild thing about this. Right now, we have no idea who's going to carry the broadcast. They haven't announced it.
Well, yeah. So what I'm about to say kind of applies to both Anheuser-Busch and the radio station. It was a horrible time to be a Washington football marketing person.
Yes.
The team is a train wreck. It has a terrible image. If you gave the NFL owners truth serum, they would say they want Dan Snyder to go away and never to be seen from again. Right. I think that Anheuser-Busch did not, we just talked about this on IJB. Anheuser-Busch didn't make a public statement as to why they dropped the team. And that's probably a nod to the fact that they are an NFL sponsor and they don't really necessarily want to bash the hand that feeds them. Right. But it's obvious that why they dropped the team. It's because the team's got a horrible image problem and they don't want to be associated with an organization that treats women horribly. And that now the radio station, same kind of thing, but slightly different. There's been criticism for years that, that Dan Snyder beat up on 980 about the coverage of the team, about the coverage of the Redskins, all of that. And that is what the Vibe 980 is putting out. And that was the Vibe 1067 put out, from what I read, that they don't feel that the Dan Snyder and company will let them cover the team fairly, which is awful, but also par for the course for a scumbag like Dan Snyder. Well, so look, in terms of like who, I don't, in terms of who can do this, I mean, I don't, DC 101 maybe, I don't know. I'm not familiar enough anymore with the Washington radio scene to really know.
So the only name I've heard so far is the right-wing talk radio station.
Which one is
that? I think it's WMAL 105.9, which I don't. So the big thing is, of course, how much money is the team looking for this broadcast?
Well, they're not in a position from a bargaining standpoint. They're not in a position to demand.
No, they're not. But I'm curious about what the number would be, because one thing that did get put out there by one of the sports junkies was that back when the team was on 106.7 and not 980, the rights were $10 million a year. And his argument is those broadcast rights ain't worth $10 million anymore.
No.
And who would be surprised? Back when we're talking when they were on 106.7, that was Sunday Sam and Frank. The team was still decent, or it hadn't fallen into the pit that it was. You still had a lot of nostalgia for the glory days, and now we're 20 years removed from that. And Larry,
they've got 5 fans left, basically.
Yeah. And let's also be honest, who listens to the broadcast anymore versus when it was Sunday Sam and Frank? I can't imagine their ratings.
Speaking as an out-of-town guy,
yeah,
there have been times, and again, I don't know if I'm going to even watch these games anymore, but for what I've done in the past sometimes is mute the TV broadcast and play the radio broadcast over like a streaming service like Amazon Alexa. And the problem is you got to sync up the TV with the radio, but I have done that. Yeah, I've done that in the past. Yeah.
Yeah, we all did that, I think, back at some point or another. I used to do that all the time in the 90s when I was like watching with my dad. That's how you were raised to watch the game if you were a local, especially. You'd listen, and it didn't matter if it was a play off. You were listening to Sunny Sam and Frank because they actually had good input.
As to problem is I could never get the TV to sync up right with the radio.
No, especially back in the old days, there was no way to do it.
Yeah.
But it'll be very interesting to see where they end up. Radio's dying. It's been living a long, slow death for years as online streaming has come into power. XM came in, and that took a huge chunk of radio away. Like, I wonder what the next step is for the. At this point, you probably would almost be better off just streaming it over the web, the broadcast. And people can listen on their phones that way. People can listen from their laptops or whatever. You probably would just get all the people over there.
Well, I think you're missing a key component here.
I know. No one's paying for that.
No, well, but what you're missing is that there's an entire broadcast network that all pays money to the team for the rights to the broadcast. And if you stream that, you're eliminating an entire network. It's not just the loss of the local flagship station. It's the loss of 25 other stations around the Virginia, Maryland.
Oh, no, I understand.
North Carolina area. That would be the problem from a Washington standpoint. So you can't just take the broadcast and stick it on whatever the team's website name is. What is it now? Commanders.com. God, that's freaking awful.
I don't think they went Washington Commanders. They just went straight up Commanders.
Okay. Yeah, so they can't just throw it up there because then they're talking about a much larger loss of revenue.
Mm-hmm. Oh, no, I realize that the revenue thing doesn't make sense yet. You'd have to find a way to make the revenue better to do a streaming.
Well, and you have a paywall, who would pay that?
Yeah.
No, zero people would pay that.
You quickly find out how few fans they have left.
I think it's obvious how few fans they have left by the attendance at the stadium.
Yeah, and those people.
I see the same 12 people every time.
That's exactly right. The same 12 people.
Let me stop. I don't go, but still, I know it's a very small circle that goes to every game.
Right. You see the Hog Farmers. You see Rev T. I heard he got kicked out. But
I think Rev T has fallen out of favor again. He's been on and off of favor for a while.
Yeah. But that handful of dudes. Yeah. A handful of weird looking dudes.
And then 30,000 visitors fans.
Yep. It's just an interesting thing how the bad news keeps coming for this front office.
Well, that's what happens when you have a guy like Dan Snyder in charge.
Yeah.
Guy who's a terrible human being and doesn't know what he's doing. I mean, this is what you get.
And you get Jason Wright, who was a newbie to all this stuff and was hired, I think, very much for political reasons, obviously.
Yes.
And even though I like Jason Wright, I know you're not as big of a fan, Steve, but there's going to be growing pains with that kind of thing. Hiring a guy who's never been in an NFL front office. So this is what's going to happen. It is an interesting story.
And in terms of Anheuser-Busch, I mean, the team sort of played it off We're going to look into now we have an opportunity to, get a great sponsor in the alcohol space.
Right.
Ask yourselves, who in the world is going to sign up for this?
Right.
And I think you're probably right, Alec. Maybe we did talk, because I remember you saying something about InBev. Somebody said something about InBev to me. But regardless, I mean, are they going to get, Heineken or somebody? I mean, it's very naive to think that anybody would want to jump into this. And furthermore, here's the big thing to me. They're really lucky Anheuser-Busch didn't bash them on the way out.
Yeah.
Because if they did, I think the whole thing would collapse. And that really makes me wonder if it's going to happen anyway. And I would encourage everybody go to boycottdan.com and email all these sponsors and tell them to
Pepsi,
drop the
I know Pepsi's the other big one that they still have.
Yeah. Tell them to drop the team, because change at the ownership level is brought on by finances.
Yep. Yeah, because I got news for you. They can say we're going to explore the space and find something better. There's no microbrewery that's going to be big enough to support this.
Well, they can get drinks into the stadium, okay? So
they can just go buy beer.
Well, it's not that. See, I've done these before because I've done everything. You can just have a contract with a distributor. I mean, that's how drinks get into stadiums anyway. So there's a difference between having a major corporate sponsor who's going to be the exclusive provider of a beverage and 2 commercials, and you just contract with the local beverage middleman to get drinks into the stadium. There's a distinct difference here. So nobody's going to not have their beer in the stadium. It's a matter of if they're going to have a major corporate sponsor. That's a distinct.
Do you get $800,000 or $1 million, whatever? I don't remember what
it was. $8 million a year.
$8 million. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you get $8 million or not? And if not, that's a big chunk of change out of your wallet.
It's a major thing. And again, who's going to sign up for this though?
Right. Not for that money.
I would like to be on the train wreck, please. I will pay you $8 million for the privilege.
Right. I will get and I jokingly put out there, if the team's looking for new broadcast partners, I'll give them $50 and we'll stream it over our website. I don't know how we make money, but we'll figure that out. It is fascinating. If Pepsi falls next, I think that's when you'll start seeing some real crazy stuff happen, because I think Pepsi's their biggest one left, aside from FedEx, who has the stadium name.
Yeah.
But you know as well as I do, Steve, that stadium name contract is pretty airtight. I don't think FedEx can get out of it.
Well, the other thing is, so remember, it's ending in a couple years anyway.
Yeah.
When the stadium goes away. So.
Yep.
Because FedEx ain't going to sign up for this again.
No.
They'll have some other stadium sponsor name.
We'll see. If Dan's here, who knows?
Yeah, true.
Yeah. All right, guys. I think that wraps it up for this week. We don't really have anything else on the agenda. So I hope
it was a quiet week for the most part.
It honestly was a quiet week, which I needed because I worked late every night this week. I was at the office till 9 one night, 7 one night. It was a long week. So I'm happy for that. Nice quiet week in the Washington football world. So anyway, we will see you all next week. Hopefully something happens. Maybe the team will actually sign a decent player like a linebacker like Steve wants. That'd be nice.
BoycottDan.com.
All right, guys. We will see you next week.